Thank you. And thank you, ASIFMA, for having me in this week's Tech and Ops conference. Fantastic so far, what I've seen, and look forward to catching up more in the reruns. So this panel is really interesting, and I hope it will inspire everybody to do more collaboration in innovation, not just between as well interbank, but also with fintechs, as you all know, very passionate about that topic. We've seen a lot of collaboration between banks, between fintechs and banks as well. And here in the panel, we have OpenFin and Symphony, who have also benefited from investments, a way of collaboration from banks to help them grow and develop products and scale. Give the opportunity as well to for the panelists to discuss a little bit more about how you do this. But first of all, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our great panel. So Queenie from Symphony, Masi from OpenFin, and Tom from Goldman Sachs, and Jen from HSBC. But first of all, why don't I let them introduce themselves and provide a little bit more on their perspective about collaboration, as well as what they do in their organizations. Over to you. Let's start with you, Jen.
Excellent, thanks. Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. So I look after in the wealth personal banking, partnership development and innovation. And that really means that we go from big tech down to small fintechs. We do proof of concepts, pilots, execution rollout. We're looking for customer-led innovation, and we're also looking for tech-led innovation. We probably have 100 POCs going across wealth and personal banking globally. Every 2 weeks, we do pitch HSBC across Asia. So we're constantly open, talking, and learning along the way. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Let's go with you, Masi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mazi Dar. I'm the CEO of OpenFin. For those of you who don't know OpenFin, we provide a desktop operating system that enables enterprise productivity. The OS has two key components. The first is an invisible web container that enables instant app deployment and interoperability across all of the apps on a desktop. The second component is a workspace that includes an app store, a digital assistant, a notification center, and a browser that is built specifically for work. Our software is being used today to power more than 3,500 apps across more than 2,400 banks and buy-side firms. And that includes 10 of the largest players that are headquartered in Asia. The use cases include trading apps, market data apps, order management systems, single dealer platforms, as well as apps across middle office, wealth management, investment banking, HR, compliance, and many other parts of banks and buy-side firms. A real pleasure to be here with you today.
Fantastic. Over to you, Tom.
Hi, thanks very much. Tom Pease. I'm head of Asia operations here at Goldman Sachs. For Goldman Sachs, we're committed to continued innovation, digitization, and collaboration, both within the four walls and outside the four walls of our organization. We participate in a range of strategic engagements with a focus on industry transformation. Within operations, we look at both the short and long-term strategic solutions, exploring the future of capital markets ecosystems across workflow, automation, industry standardization, and collaboration to reduce front-to-back friction across the entire operational workflow. And I look forward to sharing some examples of our industry participation across the course of this panel discussion.
Fantastic. Queenie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Queenie Chan, and I'm the General Manager for APAC for Symphony. I joined the company at a very early days. The company is 6 years old, and I've been with them 5.5, so it's been a very long way that I've gone, and witnessing how this world has changed. I'm very excited about today's panel because that's really the life of our everyday. Very much like Masi, with OpenFin, we are also a tool that's helping the financial institutions to collaborate and operate better. Symphony is currently, to date, the most secure and compliant market infrastructure and technology platform where the solutions are built or integrated to standardize, automate, or innovate in the financial services workflows. And the Symphony platform is a vibrant community of over 500,000 financial participants, which is the largest financial network in the world to date. And we have also professionals coming from over 500 market participants across front, middle, back offices. So our directory is trusted in a way, and it's powered over by 2,000 community-built automations, bots, and applications. The company was founded in 2014, as I mentioned, 6 years ago, and has raised $510 million US from the institutional investors. And our Goldman and also HSBC are also one of our very supportive investors as well. The reason why we existed was because financial services is powered at a great expense by sets of systems. And these systems don't normally talk to each other, as you all know. And there's a really pressing need for those systems to work with each other and also to talk to each other, both intra-firms and also inter-firms. And we, as a communication heavy-based tool that has a massive network across the industry around the world, that we are, hopefully the glue to every systems and help everyone to collaborate better in order to improve efficiencies and also minimize errors. We'll talk more about the examples later in the panel. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Queenie. Yeah, lots of questions for you as well later. So, Tom, Jen, would love to hear a little bit more about how do you collaborate across industry to drive automation and innovation? I mean, I think when you provided your introductions, Jen, I think a lot of individuals probably went, my goodness, what, 100 POCs? How do you even manage it? How do you do it? How is it? How do you get that done?
Sure. So I think we, as I mentioned earlier too, we have two kind of approaches. One is the customer-led approach. So really being customer feedback. I mean, retail banking, everybody, has their comments, and it's a one place where people will give opinions. So we don't have to worry about finding the customer feedback, both good and negative, but we take that and say, what can we improve? How can we do it better? We have legacy systems. We've been around, over 150 years. So we need to reach out and look for that collaboration on those partners who have solved it. At the same time, we can't just rely on one, right? So it's a lot of testing. We don't do 100 pilots, we do proof of concept. So we work with them, we test, whether it's prototyping wireframes, and we sit down with potential customers as well existing customers. We have something called Customer Studio, which is an amazing platform where, even ourselves, right? I'm a customer, I'm American living in Hong Kong, I lived in Shanghai, I've lived in Taiwan, I lived in New York City. As I move, banking is a huge part of that. So I myself have opinions on how it should work. And we leverage not only internally, but externally to constantly be changing and saying what's happening. We also look at competitor analysis, and sometimes those competitors in the fintech space can be our partners. So it's constantly going. The other thing is digital trends. So the tech-led innovation, you can't ignore things like blockchain, you can't ignore the advancements in AI and chatbots. So we constantly need to be exposed to them and see, would they work with us? Would they work with our customers? Would they work with our systems? And so those POCs give us the opportunity to test and then go forward.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, resonates very, very strongly, I think, with our experiences here, and I'm sure a lot of other banks across the street. Just briefly to add on from what Jen said, because it's a very good response. Goldman Sachs is also a firm believer in collaboration, with peers, clients, industry bodies, market infrastructure, and most importantly, as you can see on this panel, with technology providers. Creativity and innovation are the hallmarks for all of us. It helps us in determining the digital transformation opportunities that we really have and we really need to look for. Collaboration across the industry is going to bring scale, which in turn increases efficiency and ultimately reduces human touch, which is really important, especially when we look at it from our perspective for a client's experience when they engage with us. In the ops space, we're focused on working together with the industry to build pre and post-trade landscape. That we believe we're on the cusp of being able to transform in the industry right now. I will share some examples later that we believe both internal and external automation have been able to benefit us and our clients, and how we've been able to do this via new technology when we get to other sections in the panel.
Fantastic, thanks, Tom. And there's also the question about culture, right? Because you can't just bring in and get this going as well. There's got to be an internal willingness to change things, like you were saying, Jen, right? Innovation, the stakeholders as well. So what's the importance of culture, would you say, to be able to drive this innovation and transformation within the industry?
Great question, and I think culture is extremely important for anything we're trying to do around creativity, innovation, disruption. I mean, I was surprised. I've been at the bank 2.5 years ago that I thought it would not adapt and engage, but I was quite wrong. I came from consulting, innovation consulting, design thinking, and very open arms to try different things. And I think that's why we stay in this POC testing culture, and we're not making massive transformations. We're just, taking little sound bites from things to see what will work and fit within our culture. Within the teams, we come from such vast backgrounds. So some people on the team, worked in startups, other are legacy bankers. And when you bring them together, you create this culture of everybody wanting to change, but within reason. Our floor, even in HSBC, was called the Google floor because it was fit for purpose for that creative things. Now we've learned to do it at home, right? Annotation, Zoom, everything, we're upkeeping that. We run ideation jams all the time, which have been amazing and fun. And learning how to do it on a virtual space isn't as easy. But we get the legacy kind of bankers, not the digital teams or the transformation teams in. And they're the ones that are engaging and testing and saying, oh, my kid had this app, or I saw this. And they're bringing a lot of new color to I guess, the whole collaboration system. So culture is important, and people know that, look, nobody wants to be left behind. Everybody wants to be in the forefront. I think obviously keeping our customers safe will always stay within that, but it's very, I would say in the culture that I am, WPB, everybody wants to keep testing and trying out these new things and being, as a cool front digital runner. And I think we're getting there. It's definitely a journey, but we're having fun along the way testing.
Fantastic, thanks. That's really, really interesting. Tom, over in yours, I mean, you guys have made a lot of noise as well with Marcus and so on. So how's the culture important for this transformation and innovation?
Huge. I mean, just the same, I think, for Goldman Sachs, I mean, it's a huge area of focus. And I'm just putting, I guess, very much a sort of operational type lens on it. I mean, we're really committed to not just building highly interoperable external networks, but also ensuring that our colleagues here at Goldman Sachs themselves are upskilled and prepared for change. We are really focused on transforming the nature of operations and as a profession here in the firm to basically being more digital rather than processing. And it would sort of cover that in a bit, but I mean, just to give some more examples on that, in Singapore, we've created a center of excellence where we've hired a significant number of dedicated low-code business intelligence engineers and practitioners that are partnering with our Bangalore Center of Excellence to service the firm globally. We've established a data school training program through which which provides the foundation and skills for operation professionals and other non-traditional engineers to be able to learn to become practitioners in low-code and no-code solutions and basic programming skills. And in Asia, we're actually 80% of the way through training all of our operations professional across all aspects of the bank through that program, and Europe and the US are just starting to follow our lead. Just to give an idea, I think the reason we're doing this is because to put them through that program is precisely that, to change the culture and their mindset of the way they think around their career skills and opportunities, because it's going to be really important to shape the bank in the future. And we really believe that, in the low-code, no-code RPA space, there's going to be many solutions which are geared towards business users or citizen developers. And in GS, through Data School, we've already trained a large body of citizen developers to use these tools. And we believe it's really, really important because it puts the tools in the hands of the business users who have the domain knowledge and provide sort of midterm or last mile automation solutions and processes, which ultimately, in collaboration and complementing the sort of more traditional technology, allows the technologists and engineers to focus on problem statements that require deeper technical knowledge or coding differentiating opportunities for all our respective firms who believe in the space. And just to give some examples of what we're doing and what we're using solutions like Uncorked, Ultrix, Appian, Automation Anywhere, and bots. And some of the examples of where we've been able to leverage these tools that may resonate with the folks listening in are broker recaps, where we've been able to effectively take what was a very manual process with a lot of risk of just missing things and fat fingering, where voice trades come in are checked against emails from brokers where we do them. We've been able to streamline it and automate it entirely. So a very, very significant benefit and example. And another one is where we've actually started to use natural programming language with our CRM platform that's allowing us to start to really think in a very different way about processing email workflow, which I know is a sort of the bane of all our lives. It's also teaching a lot of useful lessons is that you need to do this thoughtfully as well. We noticed in the sort of, I guess, March, April, May peak volumes times last year is that a number of our counterparts had these kind of things in place as examples, but they were very systematic, is that they sort of almost spammed us. And so the more the more emails you got, the longer it took you to respond, and then the more emails they send. So we're having to realize we have to be very, very thoughtful around the way we implement these programs and new applications. Ultimately, though, it's really ensuring that internally we're efficient, running optimal processes, and allowing us to intelligently connect externally, ensuring that we're prepared essentially for the use of all these emerging technologies that are coming out there and making sure that we are interoperable with them within the market as well across workflows and systems. And again, we'll talk about some of these other examples as we go through the panel later on.
Fantastic, thanks, Tom. And I think that must really resonate, Queenie and Massey, because if you don't have people with the stakeholders with the right culture, right, it just takes a lot of time. Right, you're looking, you find a use case and you're trying to embed that use case, build a scenario, a user flow, and if you don't have that person that speaks the language or has the culture, it just doesn't move, or you create something that's completely wrong. So I guess now from your side, from your perspective within OpenFin and Symphony, what are the advantages as a fintech that you've had to be the vehicle of collaboration, and how have you addressed some of the challenges that you might have had in collaborating with the industry?
I'll go first. Yeah, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think throughout our experience of working with so many financial institutions, it's some of the problem statements are really quite straightforward, but usually it's the pushback comes from the inertia. Of course, changing habits is always hard, and two is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, is that these financial services are all powered heavily by systems, and we are talking about both legacy systems or just very silo systems. And the kind of, although most of these systems, we have a pressing need for interconnectivity that will accelerate workflows, but most of them are being thought or purchased or implemented in a very specific, narrow manner. And so when it adds up, it's just very hard to make the teams or like the people and the systems to talk together. So I would say, throughout our journey of converting people on the accelerating the workflow, you're absolutely right. It's very helpful to always find stakeholders in the firm, does not necessarily have to be all the way, senior management, but somebody who have an open mind and also can dream about, what the end game should be. And this is and then we, to working together with these stakeholders that will drive through these projects. And I'll give a example that's very close to heart here, that I personally working with. It's a project that we work or we are part of between Hong Kong Exchange and HSBC. As you guys know that, and it is about the intraday margin calls workflow. And as you probably know that, like Jen mentioned, 150 years of history of HSBC, and Hong Kong Exchange is also a very kind of traditional type of exchanges, right? And for them, to come up with a workflow that's completely bot to bot strictly automated. It's something certainly very interesting for the industry, and it can be kind of copied across. And it actually happened, in a matter of a month. That happened with a POC. And what I'll explain how it does. So this is it's basically two bots that sits within HSBC and Hong Kong Exchange Symphony environment. The challenge that they're trying to solve is the intraday margin call workflow, which is currently highly manual, and it's managed over emails, dispatch systems that lack connectivity to make it slow down when funding timelines are very tight. And there's so many emails flying around, with so many teams, during the process. And what the two firms have done was that, Hong Kong Exchange has built a bot called Margin Bot, which receives a potential margin call, and then it will fetch the collateral positions, calculate the net shortfall, post it to the Symphony chat room. So all these systems are already in place within Hong Kong Exchange, but they are just connecting the data to the bot, and the bot will ping it into the chat room that Symphony owns, Symphony hosts, and the margin bot will alert the Hong Kong Exchange clearing participant, sometimes human, and in this case it's HSBC Riverbot on the other end. And what this Riverbot does is to parse this information and post the data into a custody and broker outsourcing room, and a custody and external client room to discuss preparation of funds and payment instructions. And the Riverbot then also collect the data, send back the confirmation to the margin bot to automate the entire workflow. The security services team in HSBC has done this exercise and have measured that for their derivatives cash case management, they have saved 15 minutes per case, and for cash it's 40 minutes per case. And imagine how many of these cases going across multiple clearing participants in the world, right? And there's lots and lots of workflow kind of accelerated because of that. And this, particular workflow was built actually for our Innovate hackathon that we organized, a couple of years ago. And this was a matter of days to launch the POC, and it's currently in place, as a live project. And this can, of course, be extended to different asset classes, to different markets, etc. So I guess my point is that, nothing is impossible when you have the right stakeholders, and also the so-called, I guess, cliche challenges that, things has been done certain way for many years, we cannot move. I think people are being much more open-minded on these things, and the fintechs like ourselves, like OpenFin, it's poised to be supporting these sort of collaboration. And and as you mentioned, Jen and Tom, that even the banks, they have their own divisions to fuel this fire as well. So I'm very bullish on this matter.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think just that example, because we do see a lot of sort of two-party examples, and then we never hear about it again. But in this case, basically what you're saying is that it's scalable, it's portable, right? So you can basically extend it, scale it to other financial institutions.
Yes, absolutely. So of course, I don't work for the exchange, but I'm sure the exchange would like to do this with all their clearing parties, right? It's just the same flow. And in this case, because the bots are able to fetch information from these silo systems in all these organizations. So when they come back together, then humans are there to manage only exceptions. It's not about fetching data here and there, copy and pasting on emails and passing on. So I think that's, you might think that, it's actually quite magical when that happens. But if you really come down to think about it, we are really just using the bots to fetch data. It's the data flow that comes from different systems that has to go to one place. It's on Symphony or on anybody else, and that's where it is. And then the next, I guess the next step will be, like some of you talked about, right? How do we use more NLP? How do we use more voice, transcripting? How do we do all these kind of 3D type of communication channel, which, we also offer, but I'm sure there are plenty of offerings out there. In fact, you might be hearing the announcement that last night we just announced that we just acquired Cloud9, which is another fintech company, in the trader voice and also in the electronic communication. So that we believe is a very nice marriage that, we can connect the front office, the whole voice piece, and then, bring the flow together. And we'll see more of these collaboration and partnerships coming on.
Fantastic, thanks. Masi, OpenFin, I mean, this is sort of as well, the idea of collaboration is really the genesis of why you guys launched.
Yeah, Pauline, that's absolutely right. Collaboration is really at the core of the vision of OpenFin. The idea really is that in an open environment, the best apps and the best ideas can come from different teams and different firms. Some of the apps will be built internally. Some of them will come from third-party vendors. The key really for end users is that all of these apps need to work together in a seamless workflow, right? If what you've created for the end user is a fragmented environment of great apps, it's not going to improve their productivity and their happiness, and so that enabling different apps from different teams and different firms to work seamlessly together is what OpenFin enables. What that means, and the way that we're positioned as an enabling technology for the entire ecosystem for finance, is that we work with everyone from the biggest banks to large asset managers to the smallest fintechs, and those engagements are as you would expect, like really different. Some of the big banks are really set up to do this well. A couple of our investors, HSBC and Standard Chartered, have fintech teams who have really helped us navigate their organizations and introduce us to senior stakeholders. That's a massive help and really accelerates the journey for us, but also it is a benefit to their firms. When it comes to the smallest fintechs, many of them, in fact, most of them come to us because they struggle with engaging with banks. And when they see that our technology enables them to be, their apps to be instantly deployed onto a bank desktop, and that they can become part of a workflow that includes internal apps that are running on a bank desktop, for them, that's an absolute game changer, right? That's an exercise that would have taken years, compressed down to a matter of weeks. One example that's one of my favorite is the trading platform TrueMid, launched with OpenFin when they were very early. They're now a unicorn, but they were able to deploy their app to more than 150 buy-side firms in just about 2 weeks, which years ago would have easily taken years for them to do the same exercise. So that's a really exciting part of how we're able to be part of collaboration across the industry.
Yeah, fantastic. And just a quick word, because I'm sure the audience is also, if there's some on the fintech side or even on the bank side, they're probably wondering, so what does this fintech team person look like? What's the role in the banks? What are they called?
Is that
yeah,
to me?
That's a question for, yeah. Just wonder. You talked about these fintech teams in banks, right? That help you connect, navigate the organization. Sure.
So often it will be folks on the strategic investment teams. So they both look at making investments in companies, as Queenie was saying, sometimes to help fuel that innovation, accelerate it. But then as part of that, once they become investors, they have people on those teams who will help you navigate the organization and meet different teams who could be users of your product. Increasingly, you also have folks who are in sort of digital roles, digital transformation roles, and they become a key point of contact for third-party vendors and fintechs, and some of them approach that less from the how do we monetize our investment perspective, that the strategic investment teams will, and more from here's our vision of what digital transformation means in terms of saving time, reducing operational risk, and all the other things that it can unlock, and how can we apply this technology to achieve those goals. So they'll often come at it with a slightly different frame. At any large firm, the only credible strategy is to engage with as many folks in that firm as you can. Like, banks are large places. It's not sufficient to just engage with one team and hope that that's going to get you used and deployed widely within that firm.
Agree. Thanks for that additional color. So back to you, Tom and Jen. So I think now we'd love to hear a little bit more about some of those examples, projects, and really about the interoperability and portability of these, right? Because I think, there's doing a lot of POCs is fantastic. Lighthouse projects are fantastic, but at the end of the day, it's about making it scalable and deployable. And also, if we've come up with a great idea, that could be extended to the industry.
Yeah, I can kick off. So one of the projects that is near and dear to my heart, and the team is proud about, is in international education. So if you think when we talk with our customers around their pain points, and especially in the premier segment across Asia, a lot of them are sending their kids overseas to go to university, whether it's from not even university, starting as young as boarding school. And this is a segment that is not, I think a lot of banks focus on. And so we started to say, how can we look at this? Naturally, COVID changed a lot of that, with universities being a bit on hold and digital, but it is going to pick up. And they've already said in the fall, they think it will double from where people went last fall. So if you think about it, to even take China or India, but even Hong Kong, a lot of them go to, 4 key markets: Australia, Canada, the UK, and the US. And when the students get there, they don't have credit. It's hard to get a credit card. A lot of people will up their health insurance and life insurance. A lot of the parents are looking at housing. A lot of them buy property in these places. And so what we really wanted to do is say, how do we build an ecosystem for things we can't do? We can't do everything. We're not going to be doing the visas and the stamp on their passport. We're not going to be doing the sheets and towels when they land in their dorm room. And so how do we create the end-to-end ecosystem to make life for our customers better, happier, less worrisome? Because when you send your kids overseas, you're worried. You're worried about their safety. You're worried about they're going to waste your money because they're not going to class. And so what we want to do is kind of take that worry. And that's where I was saying we're very customer centric in that. And so we started a pilot program in China. It's called Scholar. It's built in WeChat. It talks about budget calculators, housing. It looks at the difference in universities based off of, your major and what you want to study. But we don't create all of that, right? Somebody's done that already. There's people that specialize in visas for students. So we've got now 14 partners in that ecosystem. And that's what we want to scale. In the next big market, they say 300,000 students leave a year from China to go overseas, right? And you've got about 200,000 in India. You've got a lot from UAE. Vietnam is increasing, Malaysia is increasing. People want their students to go to these different markets, and not just the Australia, Canada, UK, US. You've got a lot from India going into Singapore. You've got Hong Kong going into Singapore. You've got China going into Korea, Korea going into China. And there's this ability to really help our customers across that. So it's got to be scalable, and it's got to hit their pain points, not just our products. And that's where the partnerships and ecosystems is so necessary, because if you think about that 20-point journey those parents are going on from even researching the universities to them coming home and finding a job, we can do 13 well, but there's 7 that are completely open. And that's one area, right? Education. But then think about travel, think about medical, tourism. There's so many other ecosystems that are out there that we need to keep looking at from a customer standpoint, not just a product standpoint. So you can check it out on WeChat. It's still all in Chinese though, but it's a great program, and we're definitely going to be doing a lot more in that space.
Great. So very good beyond banking story there. Really interesting. So Tom, yourself, you guys, I think from memory, you've built as well a lot of products internally that clients have asked you, hey, this can we have a little bit of that, and have developed software as well internally. But how do you manage, how do you achieve interoperability and portability in your innovation and transformation projects?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for folks listening, there'll be two key strands that sort of run through continually through all the responses you're hearing. And from our perspective, fundamentally, there's going to be two core foundational elements that you're going to have to consider when you think about interoperability. One is standards and two is technology. When we consider standards as a firm, we've been very involved, as an example, globally in the Common Domain Model, or CDM, where we've partnered with ISDA and other firms on the street in the development of their Common Domain Model. The importance of the Common Domain Model is not to standardize contracts, but to standardize the way in which we talk about contracts. So we're talking the same language using a consistent model. There are also now other bodies looking at common taxonomies across different asset classes. And this standardization supports interoperability and importantly, global portability, which obviously is critical to us being successful in this space. Additionally, on the topics of standards, in 2019, we open sourced our data modeling program and language, which is named Legend, in partnership with Finos, in an effort to support industry standardization and collaboration. Again, another example of where the network effect can really help support and bolster interoperability. Having common and accepted standards then sort of creates the foundation, allows us to create flexibility on the delivery method and interaction mode with data and services. Of course, this is all underpinned by adaptable technology, which is the second critical requirement of interoperability, we believe. From a technology perspective, to my earlier point, we're committed to ensure that our clients are met via the systems and platforms that are meaningful to them and their businesses. We don't believe there's a one-size-fits-all solution, and therefore we believe this means that our services need to be channel agnostic. And I'm sure everybody sees the same and feels the same thing. Standards underpin and technology enables this. An example we're working on an interaction point strategy, building adaptable middleware services that can ingest a suite of messages and connection formats, and in turn is connected to our downstream services, ultimately reducing the time to onboard and integrate with external services, creating a more seamless experience for our clients and partners. Additionally, I'm sure like most people, we have a very robust API strategy for development and consumption of APIs, ultimately supporting greater connectivity. Really we're focused on transforming the industry to meet current and future clients and market needs, and it requires the collaboration and interoperability. We definitely believe there's no sort of advantage of just trying to do this on their own. We're only going to be able to succeed by us all coming together as a market to make this work. Just sort of talking about examples, where we're doing this, we continue to see different partnerships evolving across many different types of players across the ecosystem and financial institutions, where we have to partner with technology providers to create middleware and reduce operational frictions, joint ventures, commercial agreements, greenfield opportunities, and so on. It's great to see the collaboration. We really see it across the industry. Everybody's really keen to collaborate and work together. From our side, when we're looking at network-based solutions, we believe the adoptions as such will accelerate the digitization of our ecosystem more broadly, and more importantly, system operability will reduce the duplicative data and processing across participants to the benefit of all of us. Just a few examples of where we're working on these network-based solutions that we're actively involved in right now. Access FinTech, we've been working with them over the past 3 to 4 years, along with our peers, to pilot, incubate, and go live with workflow management solutions, integrating with outsourcers and infrastructure providers, and common data models to underpin the workflow and support industry operability. I'm sure most people do know Access FinTech, but for those who don't, it's a solution which can provide real-time data updates and shared workflow with collaboration tools to aid resolution, which will not only result in more efficient exception management, but also reduce breaks and allow us the data to ultimately reduce the volumes, and with really effective root cause remediation, which is critical to all of us. Accuracy and timeliness of everything is critical to everything we do in this industry. Access FinTech is just an example of the network-based solutions we're using, but ultimately our goal is to provide clients with the ability to have a cross-industry view across things like broker, custodian, outsourcer, fund administrator. The key to that circles back to my initial point, focusing on collaboration using common data models to enable interoperability across the system. Another example is Axoni. We've been partnering with Axoni again, and they're a company that, along with us and our peers, we've invested in. They're a distributed ledger technology. We've been working with them for the past few years on a proof of concept on equity swaps. where Axoni intends to fundamentally re-architect the front-to-back services via smart contract, automating lifecycle events, and thus removing exceptions by maintaining, really importantly, a single source of truth. The first phase we're currently in is acting as a middleware, but ultimately front-to-back focus from everything from matching, confirming transactions using smart contracts to the management throughout their entire lifecycle. And I'm sure most of you who've worked in the space when it comes to derivatives, things like equity swaps, being able to do this, have a single source of truth all the way through front to back is going to be transformative to the way we're able to operate in that front to back ecosystem. And as you can see, and I'm sure appreciate, the underpinning of success is common data models and authoritative data stores that are fundamental to our long-term resilience for all of us. Finally, just focusing on one last one, HQLAX. GS, along with other large market participants, have made an investment in HQLAX, which is focused on digitization of collateral swaps in Europe to begin with, and ultimately build out the digitization movement of cash on blockchain as well. Really, as a simplified explanation, it's a process of tokenization, where existing assets are represented on a blockchain as tokens. Really, once you've got your assets represented on a blockchain network, the movement of those assets simply represented by the movement of tokens. So really straightforward, really clear, really efficient and fast, and ultimately, completely undeniable as a source of truth. Those tokens immediately represent the movements of trades with complete certainty and complete finality, which I think is going to be to the benefit of all of us. The benefits include the ability to create intraday markets for liquidity, improved collateral movements, reduction of liquidity, settlement and counterparty risk, as well as the operational efficiencies that ultimately all of us would like to derive from all the benefits I just talked about. So those are just a few of the examples of sort of working in the space right now for you.
That's fantastic. Thanks. No, that's a really good overview. And of those, so for example, the ones you gave on Axoni as well, are you taking a bit of a industry consortium approach, getting other industry players involved, any other peers? Because in all of these things, especially in relation to DLT, it's always, we're going to be followers. So have you managed to get other peers involved in this?
So there are other peers involved in different pilots we're doing across the industry, across these different spaces. It really depends on the problem set and the pilot we're looking to do. So where it makes sense, we are bringing in other participants from the industry.
Interesting. I've got a few more questions here, but so let's just and maybe back to you, Jen, as well. What would you say is what do you think are the opportunities of collaboration over the next 12 to 18 months?
I think building off my last example, these ecosystems and core areas that are important to the end customer, right? So people, whether it's, entertainment, health is another big one. I think honing into how do we build the right collaborative efforts, ecosystems, whatever you want to call it, to address the personal behaviors of the consumer. Being on the consumer side of the bank, obviously that's a key for what we're trying to do at HSBC. But if you think about the behavioral changes and how people since COVID have really changed, I think they're demanding more tailored experiences. They've got a lot more choice online in the digital set because people were forced to digitize faster. And so rather, naturally a consumer, and we all are consumers of different areas, are going to go find what's best fit for them. But then creating the platform, the marketplace, those ecosystems where it's easier or more seamless is going to be, I think, a trend we'll continue to see, and they'll really be able to engage and get more tailor fit products and opportunities there. So I know that's a big thing for us. In this particular region, obviously, we're going to see a lot out of GBA. It's the new buzzword, a lot of activity, not just in financial services, but down to like medical tourism a lot. There's going to be a lot of connectivity there and a lot of opportunity, but I think that's going to start resonating. You've already seen Singapore and Malaysia do that a lot. I think, New Zealand and Australia, I think there's going to be these sister markets that are going to really leverage what GBA is doing and some of the great opportunities there and start looking in other markets. So I think we need to be looking out for that as well.
All right. So, and I'll jump around a little bit for this question. So Mazi, where do you see the opportunities for collaboration happening in the next 12, 18 months?
Yeah, look, the one of our biggest focuses is around application interoperability. We come at it from like thinking about apps talking to one another on the desktop, right? And there are a number of very specific use cases that work really well when you're talking about desktop communication. That could be an app interacting with chat, like with Symphony. And we have an integration with Symphony that enables that so that you can move seamlessly from Symphony to other apps on the desktop in either direction. Things like sharing context. So whether you're thinking about a particular customer or a particular security, and you can automatically get all of the apps on the desktop to show you information about that customer or that security. As Tom was saying earlier, this is all built on first standards and second technology. On the technology side, what OpenFin provides is the communication layer right on the desktop that allows the apps to connect and share data. With respect to standards, in 2017, we started a standard called FDC3 in partnership with 12 banks. We contributed that standard to Finos in 2018. That standard provides the common language. So FDC3 is the common language that allows apps to easily interoperate on the desktop. So there's been a lot of momentum behind that. Many banks and buy-side firms and vendors have adopted that standard now, and it's allowing for really plug-and-play interoperability between apps so that you don't have to do a bespoke integration between every app and every other app on a given desktop, and that's a game changer. We see that in the next 12 to 18 months, going to production. We've been in sort of standards development mode for the last couple of years with early adoption. In the next 12 to 18 months, we're working with lots of folks in the industry to get more of that into production, so it's really broadly available.
And how are you prioritizing the types of use cases? Because so I know one of those projects, so for example, in the RegTech space, right? I mean, one of the big complaints that or pushback that we get from the industry is that, fantastic solution, but it just solves that little piece of my workflow, right? In transaction monitoring or onboarding, right? I'd love to see an end-to-end solution. So how are you prioritizing which areas to go into, or?
Yeah, well, look, the focus of the standards group has really been on the key building blocks, right? And that is, a simple API that apps can use to talk to one another. And then in terms of the language, it's defining the common nouns and verbs, right? So on the noun side, it's like the context, right? Like a person, a security, and we're not trying to write kind of new identifiers or codes. It's use the existing ones that are already out there. With respect to the verbs, it's sort of think of them as workflow instructions, like start chat, right? View chart. It's codifying those standard workflow instructions that are vendor independent or app independent, but that can allow that kind of interoperability. Now, those building blocks are being used in lots of different areas. So internally within banks, both in the front office and middle office, for portfolio managers, and so we're working with many different firms on implementing those different use cases. But we haven't, at this stage, we haven't sort of said, hey, let's just focus on like one asset class or one user persona. The point is really to enable the ecosystem to use these building blocks to create interoperability in all the different segments.
Yeah, no, so super exciting. I'm really excited about that project. Queenie, so 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Macy just mentioned on the context part. Definitely, I think that will be extremely important on the rise, on above, and of course on the ecosystems that Jan mentioned and the standardization, tokenization of the, I guess, industry, kind of how people collaborate. You need to speak the same language or narrow down the languages, to go. For me, I think the only things that I would add to is that in all these collaboration trends, that as it comes up, the identity management, or how you trust the identity that you're kind of socializing with or dealing with, it's becoming more and more important. Yeah. Especially being accelerated with COVID, where a lot of things had to be done virtually. We are seeing that as you collaborate, then the need to have a trusted identity on your counterparties or on your clients has becoming on the rise. And so, before you start exchanging sensitive information, doing transactions, doing settlement, it's not just the firm's identity, but who you're dealing with, who your client is, and then that it's to us, it's relevant to us because we are the kind of the collaboration or the communication channel, right? So with the combination of video, voice, screen sharing, traders' voice, etc., that I think, we would be very keen to be part of this whole identity management, the directory management part of the project, which is quite critical in this collab world, I think, in the near future. And then the second part is, which is related to what I just said, right? It's kind of COVID, I think this is particularly pronounced in Asia, is the use of mobile. So you definitely have to make sure your product is mobile friendly at a point, and that's also appeal to the younger generation. We are so used to in our personal life to execute things or do things on mobile, but in reality, there's a lot of these financial services that are still not mobile. So this is where I think will be very interesting, and I see a lot of challengers coming into the space as well, and we are ramping up our own stack as well. And the final point I would make is that, as I said, when you deal with more of these collaboration and this virtual world, then the question about the data security comes, is these so many leakages, so many problems, hackings, that's been coming up, and there are plenty of ways to tackle that, but there are also just plenty of loopholes everywhere. And as everything started going more kind of interconnected and everything start to be more virtual, and the old thinking about let's lock up everything under the drawer, or let's have an on-prem thing that guard everything, doesn't work anymore in the new world. And I think the regulator, frankly, is also very aware of that. And I think they're being supportive and creative and open-minded to consult, like fintechs or the banks, how can we, this is the trend, instead of forcing you to make sure things are on premise, have stack of papers, to be on record, what do you do about that? So I think this is also an interesting space as we talk about these kind of connectivity. I guess this is like the one layer after, once you're connected, then what's next, right? How do you actually, make it sustainable and make it a trusted channel?
Fantastic, thanks. And to your previous example, actually, that you just gave, so am I hearing a KYC utility coming from Symphony, maybe?
Yeah, well, we are no KYC expert, right? So we of course, would love to be in that space, and we do have plenty of POCs in that area. That's not just in the capital markets, right? It's all across insurance, private bank, you name it. So we are active in exploring, and also, but like I said, I think there are so many fires that you need to put out, and we pick the places where we think we can add the most value, and we have the right connectivity to the right partners to do that. So but something, I think, beyond KYC, there are many things, like even like in the, just talking to Jan, like even when the wealth management private bank world, there's like, how do you you can't go to the branches to sign some docs anymore. Like, what do you do about it? And how do you prove that you are the so-and-so, right? Like that, there's a lot of these kind of even biometrics companies that are currently servicing that. But can that be weaved kind of seamlessly into the whole workflow? I think that's the interesting part.
No, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thanks. Tom, next 12, 18 months, what's your take? And just countdown wise, we've got 3 more minutes.
Yeah, sure. Just quickly, just to pick up on one of the points that Queenie talked about, the impact of COVID. We've definitely seen a lot of change in the industry as a result of the global pandemic and market events that we've had in the last 18 months. And really, the light's been shone on pre-trade and post-trade space, which from our vantage point hasn't had this degree of focus before, and highlighting some of the efficiencies that exist there. Just briefly mentioning two main catalysts of change that we see: unparalleled market volatility, exposed inefficiency in current infrastructures as many firms to a certain degree struggle to clear and settle at the required pace, leading to exception backlog numbers we've never seen before and significant areas of operational friction. Secondly, our workforce adjusted to remote working. We saw the demand for, I think Queenie sort of touched on it briefly in the sort of the retail space, but contactless and digital-based processes, and really force the dialogue around digital transformation where it doesn't exist in many of our processes today, and where it needs to be enacted through the help of market participants such as ourselves, regulators. I can think of things like chops on documents and so on, market structures and so on. It's fair to say that there's a large amount of change still ahead of us, and we're committed to addressing these pain points around transformation alongside all our peers here, because as I said before, and everybody said, we can't do it alone. There's no competitive advantage. We appreciate this isn't going to be an easy journey, but I think the potential benefits are clear. The challenge, of course, will bring with it opportunity, and one thing's become apparent throughout the pandemic was that there was direct correlation between firms that had strong digital infrastructure and ability for those firms to be able to adapt quickly, and where they were able to stay connected to their customer and ultimately outrun the others. So that's just a natural area, I think, for focus on the entire industry.
Yeah. No, really, really great overview. And I think, I've got so many more questions, but unfortunately we've got to end. So look for organizations that I think if you're looking what your next move is, I mean, there's tons of projects at HSBC, at Goldman, at OpenFin, at Symphony that sound really exciting. So thank you again for ASIFMA and fantastic Tech and Ops Week, and look forward to catching you all again. Thank you and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.